Whew. What am I going to do for Season 6? Do I start off grand, or start with something smaller scale and gradually lead up to the bigger projects that everybody's anticipating?
I thought you were doing Super Metroid.
I know, I did say that, but that needs a lot more time in the creative oven.
Well, I don't have an answer, but Doom 64 comes out on March 20th for Steam, PS4 and Xbox One.
I already played that and reviewed it. Besides, while the footage does pixelate at times, I still stand by most of what was said, even though I could have gone further with my ideas.
Yeah, but Alec, this port has a new chapter.
What? Oh man, I gotta get in on this. id Software, shut up, take my money, just take my entire life savings, even though it's just pennies in here. Take it, take it, take it!
You found a side quest!
What can I honestly say about Doom that hasn't been said before? Absolutely nothing. End of video. Anyways, Doom may have not been the first FPS game ever made. Heck, it's not even the first FPS game made by id Software, but Doom reinvented the genre and pushed forward what the genre was capable of by having not only multiple floors, immersive lighting effects, advanced at the time texture mapping, but it also had blood and guts, and lots of it too. I mean, sure, Wolfenstein 3D had that as well, but not to the level of Doom where you see troopers impaled on spikes when you get to the third chapter. Add that with a heavy metal inspired soundtrack and you have one hell of a weekend ahead of you. Ha! See what I did there? Because it takes place in hell? Tough crowd. And while that very game was a reason to upgrade your PC, its sequel wasn't too shabby either. It wasn't innovative by any means, but with even bigger levels, one new but extremely fun weapon to use, and brand new enemy types, it was all we wanted and it was legendary. But Doom seemed to define the fourth generation of gaming and kinda stayed within that bubble, thanks to being phased out by the advent of 3D gaming a few years later. Because while sequels and spin-offs were made, they didn't quite gain the popularity the first two entries did, but at the time, other FPS games came out and shifted interest in the FPS consumer base, and by 1997, they were more interested in the likes of Turok Dinosaur Hunter, GoldenEye, and Quake, reflecting the interest in true 3D gaming. Doom 64, on the other hand, it came out in 1997 and was initially criticized for not pushing the genre forward due to sticking strictly to its roots. I mean, sure, the environments were 3D, but the enemy sprites and guns were in 2D, and it was a Nintendo 64 exclusive, meaning if there was any interest in the game, the Doom fans on PC wouldn't experience it unless they had the console. But over the decades, it gradually gained a cult following. So much so, there were modders who were dedicated to making the Doom 64 experience playable on PC. So now in the year of 2020, Doom 64 finally got an official multi-platform release with brand new levels to coincide with the release of Doom Eternal. Hello everyone, Alec Elger, the side question gentleman here. Yep, that's my new name that I'm sticking with. I'm not changing it back to the side quest gamer. Get used to it. Anyways, it's not often that I revisit games I already reviewed because I just rather move on to other projects, to be honest. However, what makes this different than the original Doom 64 review? There's no lost levels, like ones that were made specifically for the multi-platform official release. Like, how could I resist? So, because I'm not really reviewing Doom 64 itself, but rather the lost levels, I'm gonna make a little series within a series to pretty much cover these kinds of games, whether it be for new DLC that I didn't get a chance to cover back when I reviewed the original game, or just extras like this, or maybe something I just missed out on. So, with that said, welcome to the SQG Review Show Second Quest Retrospective. And yes, it's a Zelda 1 reference. How could I resist? Because I reviewed this game before and pretty much said all I needed to say in my original Doom 64 EX video, I'll just recap my thoughts and say it is my favorite Doom game. I love the more ambient horror themed soundtrack. I mean, I do miss a thrash metal inspired MIDI soundtrack, but because it's been done twice before, I welcome Aubrey Hodges' suspenseful horror compositions. It makes me so freaking tense, and it adds to the atmosphere, not to mention the graphics. Look at all these creature designs. I mean, to be fair, not all of them are winners, as the imps and arachnotrons lost their menacing quality they once had, and now the Caco demons look like pain elementals now that they're tan and have arms, and the pain elementals don't have arms and 2 mouths now. But I like what they did with the demons and the cyber demons. They upgraded the designs to look menacing instead of drastically changing them to be unrecognizable. They actually look straight from hell, instead of just pink pixelated bulls. Ooh, so scary. Oh, you're gonna chew me up. Oh, you're so cute, little pink bull demons. Holy shit, I take back everything I said. Get away from me! Although I did miss the excluded enemy types like the Renavant and the Spider Demon, and even the Archvile. I know this enemy has a mixed reception in the Doom community, but Doom 2 mostly placed them in places with a ton of cover to save yourself. And there's also a new variation of the imps, but they're just recolored normal imps, except with higher damage output, and I only noticed a difference on higher difficulties. I also liked how they implemented the bonus levels. In fact, I think their implementation is much better than Doom 1 and Doom 2's bonus levels. And to be fair, Doom 2 is unique for having the Wolfenstein 3D Nostalgia Trip bonus levels, but 64's bonus levels actually have a purpose. They give you rewards that help you with the rest of the game. That is, if you can find them. Because 64 has this new weapon called the Unmaker, also known as, what the f is this? It gets more powerful as you collect these keys, and believe me, they help so much with that BS final boss level. The level design does have some occasional beginner's traps and whatnot, but I don't feel like they ruin the game, as it's just standard Doom logic that a key out in the open on a pedestal with some lighting effects around it is not to be trusted. And while you can see where the needle traps come from in some levels, activating a whole room full of them can get pretty tense real quickly. The best traps are easily the enemy ambushes, because if say you collect a key and then all of a sudden they appear, you still have the opportunity to take them out without taking much damage. There is the risk of not being aware of the one spawning behind you, but the sound design usually covers that, adding to the player's spatial awareness. And because each enemy has a unique roar or screech, you can tell which ones spawn and whether it's worth fighting or just running away. Run like hell! And let me just say, I love the ending where Doom Guy stays behind to fight the forces of hell forever, and that ending has popularized the hypothesis that Doomslayer from Doom 2016 is the same character as he was from Hell. And that's why this advertised brand new chapter by Night Dive Studios got everyone excited, because there is the possibility that the new ending ties into Doom 2016 and Eternal. So Doom 64 is an extremely great time that fully realizes the potential of classic Doom, but the question is, are the lost levels as great as the main campaign? Let's find out. While the original Doom 64 was developed by Midway, this port was made by Night Dive Studios, who has a reputation for updating older PC games like System Shock 2 and Blood for current gen systems, so already I know this port is in good hands. Like the fan-made EX mod, it makes a ton of fixes like adding mouse and keyboard controls, improved visibility, so that now you don't have to increase the brightness on the TV just to see where the hell you're going. While I do miss the up and down aiming we saw in the EX version, I can understand those who would argue the game was never intended to be played that way and that it would just break the game now that it can easily aim at the upwards enemies. And like you would expect from a PC release of Doom 64, you can of course customize your control scheme to your liking. In fact, if you really wanted to, you could hook up an Xbox One controller and play it that way. But if you do that, let me know so I can point, laugh, and make fun of you and have others do the same because you dare have a different control preference than I do. One thing I must mention is that you don't have the lost levels immediately available to you. You either have to beat the game from start to finish, or do what I did and just beat the secret level Hectic. Son of a... To be fair, I wanted a quick and easy method to unlock the lost levels, but to play this level just to unlock the level warping settings, man. I mean, to be fair, I just wish the lost levels were there to begin with so I don't have to play Hectic. That's just f***ing wrong. Wait, what the hell is this? Yeah, can I just say Hectic is the worst freaking stage in the entire Doom series? It has so many beginner's traps, a lot of claustrophobic BS, like using a rocket launcher in an arachnotron infested area, and I hate the Hell Knight section on this bridge. Oh, and if you're a completionist, those items you can't get don't count towards the item percentage, so this level and Midway for putting it in as a way to unlock a special menu. As if the obtuse BS you had to do in the first level to unlock the secret exit to this level wasn't bad enough. I just realized this is an M-rated game, right? So why am I censoring the big curse words just because it looks more professional from a critic? Nah, fuck that pansy-ass bullshit. Oh, jeez. Oh, man, so much pain. Oh, jeez, this swear jar. It's a swear jar. It's a demonic swear jar, okay? Oh, jeez. Oh, God. It hurts. It's like searing, flaming pain. Here. This swear jar is going to be full by the end of this review, isn't it? So the Doom 64 port by Night Dive Studios is good. As for the new levels, there are surprisingly only 6 of them, and all of them are pretty consistent in quality, but I wasn't really wowed by them initially. To be fair, the Ultimate Doom expansion did surprise me occasionally, but not for the right reasons. The attempt to up the difficulty fell short because there is a lot of beginner's drafts and BS that still shows up on repeat playthroughs. So the fact that all these lost levels are designed to be fair is a blessing in itself, but they just don't have as much of an impact on me until like the third level and the final one. Like the first one, it acts like a first level rather than a continuation. Sure, later introduced enemy types like the Nightmare Imps and Caco Demons make an appearance, with even more of them on a higher difficulty. But you're down to a pistol and bare knuckles weapons-wise until you get more, and they give you guns like a shotgun and whatnot. Not to mention it reestablishes the core Doom game design of finding color-coded doors that require their corresponding color keys. And the goal, in addition to overcoming enemies in the hallways, is to solve the puzzle that is the level. It's not just point A to point B level design, it's pretty much a straightforward maze of puzzles that require solving, like lowering a pedestal by hitting a switch somewhere and using your powers of observation to find the way. Like, even if you can't see where to go when hitting a switch, you can usually hear where to go next, as the sound design in this game is really good. Exploration is also helped by the fact that the enemies you kill leave their body carcass as a landmark to indicate areas you've already been in. I know this has been a pillar of classic FPS design since not even Doom 1 but Wolfenstein 3D, and there's probably an earlier game that did this as well. However, this kind of design philosophy is still much appreciated to see it here, especially in 1997, because games like GoldenEye, when you killed an enemy, they just disappeared. But back to how PlanOps stands on its own merits, it just feels like one of the earlier space station levels, except lacking the darkness that made them so iconic. It's decent on design alone, and serves well as a refresher course for Doom vets like me who have been out of the game for a while, but I can't help but feel the best is yet to come. Now, as for the second level being Evil Sacrifice, this is exactly what I want. Like, this looks like hell from the depictions I've seen in various artwork you were force-fed in art class. No, fuck that. I meant hell as the place, so it doesn't count as a curse word if I'm referring to it as the place. No, fuck that. Oh, right. That makes sense. Fair enough. I mean, it has blood, candles, rocks, a library, because reading books about the dark arts of science is evil. It's also darker, more ambient, and more maze-like to the point where I had a great time here. Wouldn't call it the best Doom 64 level of all time, but it's one of the highlights of the Lost levels most definitely, especially because they introduced the harder enemy types like the arachnotrons here. There's not even any beginner's traps like grabbing a key only for the ceiling to crush you, although if you were comfortable with the difficulty of the first level, this one ups the difficulty with returning enemy types like the arachnotron and pain elementals to make you feel like, okay, this won't be an easy ride after all. And thankfully, the next level, Cool Grounds, isn't too shabby either. This is actually one of my personal favorites of the Lost levels. Direction can admittedly be a bit confusing at first, as there are multiple caves, elevators, and floors, and that face puzzle where you have to match the switches with the correct faces makes its return here, although thankfully the solution is all in the same room, so you don't don't have to backtrack to a few rooms beforehand just to find it. It's very big and spacious. There's a lot of good enemy types, which is ideal for combat, especially on the harder levels where it feels like survival horror, but it just has enough of that puzzle solving and keycard progression to make it more than just shooting. I love this level, even if it does rehash certain puzzles and level themes. The fourth level, I can't say much new about it other than it reintroduces the booby traps that Doom 64 is kind of infamous for, like these projectile spikes that shoot out of the walls after getting the keycard, but other than that, this level is definitely the crown jewel of the map pack. I mean, it's pretty similar to Evil Sacrifice aesthetically speaking, but it's a lot longer, the enemy placement is fair yet more challenging as it should be. There's a lot of set piece variety here. What's not to love about Wretched Vast? Like, if you get sick of the corridor combat, don't worry, there's open areas where you can fight enemies too. Although Thy Glory is by far my least favorite of the Lost levels. I mean, the more platforming centric nature of this level is a breath of fresh air coming after the previous 4 levels, but the walking on lava at times where you're without a protection suit, that can be a bit annoying. It also doesn't help that despite the teleporters, backtracking can be a bit tedious if you don't know where to go, especially when you make a bridge appear with a hit of the switch. Not to mention, for some reason, this is the only level that brings back those god-awful missile turrets you can't destroy. Like, sure, there's only 2, but they were one of the more annoying obstacles in Doom 64 depending on their placement. At least you can see where they are and when you first encounter them. I still think it's an alright level, but I can't think of anything accomplished that the previous 4 levels didn't do much better. And the final level, appropriately called Final Judgment, it is a standard romp against all the enemy types you want, but you have plenty of the Doom power-ups like the invincibility as well as the 200% health, and all the ammo for each weapon you could want. And speaking of weapons, I also like how it gives you every weapon like the BFG, the Unmaker, the plasma rifle if you didn't have one previously, basically any type of weapon you missed or lost on the way to this level. That is awesome! What the fuck is this? Ah, shit, I swore again, didn't I? And now that you have the Unmaker, you notice the gate has 3 of the Demon Key illustrations communicating the goal that the Unmaker's 3 Demon Keys can be collected in this level, and unlike the main campaign where you have to find the secret levels to get these keys, they are a mandatory replacement for the key cards in this level, and it was fun, easily my second favorite level of the Lost levels. And I would even say it functions much better as a final level than even the original final level in the main campaign, because for one, there's a standard level goal that needs to be done, and the final boss is after you deal with the main level objectives. To me, this is what a final level in an FPS game should be more like, instead of just open areas where you can barely take cover from the onslaught of attacks. Although, because the Demon Keys are mandatory, and that makes the Unmaker overpowered as all hell, you see, that was fine in the main campaign because you really had to go out of your way to find them, especially the Void's key, and it would just make short work of the boss. But here, because the only effort put in to get these keys was par for the course in terms of being a regular level objective, it kind of feels like a nothing victory. I mean, I don't have to use the Unmaker weapon if I don't want to, but I don't know, maybe doubling her hit points and making her partially invisible except for a shadow cast at the bottom floor? That would work much better as an FPS boss. But as it is, that's the only downside of this otherwise great level. It has about everything I would want in a combat focused level. Alright, finally the part we've been waiting for. How does this game connect to Eternal as well as the 2016 reboot? Well, let's find out. Basically, the story takes place after the main campaign. The Sister Resurrector pulls Doom Guy out of hell, and he had to make his way back, but she also wants him dead. Could have just killed him beforehand. Anyways, I don't really see how this connects to Doom 2016 that much, except for this one line that says, "A path of perpetual torment," being Doom Guy's grim vision that takes hold of his mind after killing the Sister Resurrector. That very line was used in one of the Doomslayer's testaments in Doom 2016, implying that Doom Guy is in fact the Doomslayer, and more importantly, that Doom 64 is in fact canon with the rest of the series, so it shouldn't be skipped by those who thought it was either a spin-off or a remake of the original Doom. That's probably why this game was re-released the same day as Doom Eternal. They didn't want to make this connection until Eternal was out and have Doom 64 as an official release, because if you didn't play 64 after Doom 2, you probably have no idea that Doom Guy stayed in hell to take out the remaining demons. So overall, while the port itself is really damn solid, There's just something missing about it. By their own merits, the levels are well designed. They don't throw in cheap shots at the player, and even if you went into this blind, it's not necessarily overwhelming unless you went into it with a higher difficulty selected. But as a whole, it doesn't do anything new or exciting, but instead remixes previously established level design, with the final level being kind of an exception, although not much of one. And foreshadowing what is to come in Doom 2016, while it is great for validating fan theories of Doomguy being Doomslayer, it didn't feel important enough to be the selling point, because spoiler alert, wouldn't it be more interesting to have that final moment take place right before the flashback in Doom Eternal, and have that image be of Doomguy being dragged away instead of the same one of Doomguy in front of the hellish mountains? If they can change the type-on text of it, then they can most certainly commission a pixel artist to make a new background of it. I know some of you might be like, what the hell were you expecting, you whiner? Good question. Oh, also, oh jeez. Here.
On and on.
What do you mean not enough? Oh god, searing pain. Here you go. So what was I expecting, you may ask? Well, there's a difference between expecting something and hoping for it. To be fair, they're not mutually exclusive terms, but what I was expecting was a new chapter, and I got that. But what was I hoping for? Well, I hope that the new levels would be well designed and fit in with the rest of the game. That I also got. There are arguably higher tier levels in the whole game with 2 exceptions, but as for the other things I was hoping for, I was hoping the epilogue would have more of an impact on the series' storyline, instead of come up with an excuse to rehash the main villain and make reference to a Doomslayer testament you may or may not have read just to call it a day. But the main thing I was really hoping for was the level design to be new and fresh, and maybe give us a modified weapon to play around with for so many levels. Because if you want to make an expansion pack, make it untreaded territory, not yesterday's donuts, and that's a problem the Doom series has always had. But just because other games did it doesn't mean it's exempt from the rule. Duke Nukem 3D's 4th chapter, The Alien Queen, is how you make an expansion pack. New enemies, new weapons, brand new levels like the fast food place. Oh, and it also increases the difficulty curve of the previous 3 chapters, making it function quite well with the rest of the game. That is a masterpiece of an expansion, and while I wasn't expecting the Lost Levels to do anything close to that, as to be fair, it is a $5 port on Steam, I would honestly pay more for the game if it means fresh new levels. So overall, Doom 64's Lost Levels are pretty decent. There are no bad levels among these Lost Levels compilation, however, I can't help but feel there's only like 1 great level, 2 good levels, and 3 okay-ish to decent levels. However, the Lost Levels as they are just a small fraction of what Doom 64 as an entire package has, and there's a lot to be had. But that's probably not going to be the talk of the town, because Doom Eternal released this year and it looks even better than the predecessor, which was said to bring back the classic FPS style for a new generation and even reinvent it completely. And really, it's simply amazing just seeing one of my favorite video game series of all time come back with not just a bang, but a blast from a BFG 9000. Especially after Ion Fury kind of burned out people from the retro FPS throwback bonanza that was the late 2010s. I'm also glad that Eternal reinvigorated interest in the series, and re-releasing an obscure but great entry like Doom 64 on multiple platforms is most definitely the best way they can capitalize on the hype. Especially for people like me who rarely buy games at full price, but would like a taste of the Doom action regardless. Thank you all so much for watching this episode since it's the Season 6 premiere, but don't worry, this is only just a bit of what's to come. This is only the beginning, and I had to start off with a smaller scale project so I can work my way up to more ambitious projects, and there's a lot to come. A lot of things that have been requested shall get videos on them. But until the next episode, thank you all so much for watching, and remember to stay awesome. Oh, finally. Oh, God.
First, like you let him like some way to
Hello, Supreme Leader, President, SQG.
I'll just get to the point. You disappoint me.
Well, I'm sorry, I have other projects I have to, focus on.
Other projects? No excuses. I fund those projects, and I expect some returns on them.
Hey, in my defense, even though that equipment was rather expensive and nearly all of it was damaged within that time-space explosion,
Gee, you think?
well, it was a success. SideQuest Gamer is dead, and we killed him. Well, it was mostly me, you just gave the order, and took credit for it. I expect a very nice holiday bonus for that, by the way.
You will get what you deserve, although it's going to be taken out for the damages.
Listen here. You would be nothing. You wouldn't be in the position of power you are if it wasn't for me that tampered with the democracy of Earth SQG.
I appreciate your servitude, but even then, they do say all good things come to an end.
Look, I am aware that COVID-19 has reached our planet, and, well, it's really been disastrous, especially financially speaking. But I'm afraid I'm going to have to request another grant.
Absolutely not. You were given enough money, and I expected you to have some left over for your next projects.
You have all the money on the planet, literally, at your fingertip. And you're saying you just can't give a little bit to me.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
I can make bigger and better soldiers. I can make it so that, like before when you were elected 20 years ago, that democracy will be in your favor. It'll give the illusion of democracy. But we all know the truth. I mean,
You're still not getting another grant for your secret project. I have enough tied up as it is.
very well then, Supreme Leader. I am very disappointed in this news.